today what we're going to do, a couple things. Number one, today is what's known as a paper day. Oh, Decoria, we get the lights first? I appreciate it. Today is a paper day. That means is you should have, hopefully, turned in your paper. If you have not, and you're currently freaking out because it just said that, first of all, it is what it is. Like wherever you're at in whatever kind of process, this is the life you are currently living. So just breathe through it. That's what I'm doing right now. This guy's not happy. And secondly, talk to me if you want after class. We'll figure it. Don't. I'm in that kind of place. We'll talk about it. All right, it'll be all right. So anyway, what we're doing though, what I like to do on paper days, we do have a little bit of the semester left. I keep it pretty low stakes. I keep it pretty low pressure. Most of you, if you turned in the paper, and I hope you did, we're probably working on that last night, maybe this morning, maybe early this morning, sort of thing. So it's going to be a lot of me talking, but ideally I want to involve you in that conversation, and we're going to try to do that here in a little bit. To begin with, I'm also going to sit today. I know that's kind of not, but this week is a sitting week. It's a project. And again, I mentioned this last time, you guys can sometimes feel a lot of stress with that kind of language. It's not that kind of project, okay? There will be no poster boards, or very few of them, I guess. I can't, I'm not outlawing poster boards, but the due date is listed at the end of our course calendar. That means it's on the syllabus. That means I don't know off the top of my head. It's on the syllabus. It's on CourseNet as well, but that's why those things exist. So I can use them too. I cannot memorize dates. I did not. May 3rd? That sounds good. Let's confirm it. But I did not know today was the 21st. And my birthday was on Tuesday. So thanks. But I knew what Tuesday was. I couldn't do the math, right? So I'm just telling you, it's written down. You can find it because I'll have to find it. Length, at least 10 minutes. Even that I'm kind of iffy on, but you want to get close to 10 minutes. You can go over 10 minutes. 5% of your final grade. So it's not nothing, but it is the kind of assignment that if you do reasonably well, it can help you a little bit. Kind of in a similar vein to what we were talking about right before class. If you're on the line, final grade-wise, between a C and a B or something like that, this can be the sort of assignment that can kind of push you over that edge, if you need a little bit of help, one way or the other. What the assignment is. So I mentioned right from the top, I want to cover this to begin with. Either with a classmate or two or on your own. This can be a group project, but it does not have to be, all right? I especially understand. Group project, immediately I shut down. I'm like, no, talking to people, and then also depending on, no, and no. That's fine, you can do it yourself. But if you would like to involve one or two, and actually I say classmates, I've had some people go way off script and involve other people. You could do that, I suppose. You could have your friend. I'd never considered that before, but yeah, people last semester were like, all right, so these are my two buddies. I'm like, okay, cool, okay, whatever. That's fine if that's what you want to do. But again, you can solo it if that's what you prefer. What is it? All it really is, the lowest bar of this thing, because again, there's all this language up here. You can read, I hope. Well, if you can't, you've been doing really well to make it this far. Lowest bar is it's a podcast, wherein I want you to pick a text that we did not talk about this semester. So the only things that are really off limits, Fairchild Poems, Slaughterhouse-Five, Die Hard. Any other text that exists, so it could be a poem or a novel, but let's be serious, it could be a movie, a TV show, a video game. I've had people in the past do albums that were really cool. Anything like that at all. And the cool part of this assignment usually is it's something you're into. I understand you guys probably weren't Vonnegut fans before this semester. You probably, most of you aren't now. I get that. So what are you into? And ideally, what have you maybe over the course of our conversations this semester maybe thought about, maybe just in passing? We talked about Vonnegut this one time, and that reminded you of an episode you were really into a couple years ago, anything like that, okay, that you feel like would fit into the conversations we've tried to have this semester. I want you to make a podcast about it. Now, what would that podcast entail? Again, the lowest bar would be audio only, would be you talking to me, just like this. Here's my text, here's what it's about, here's why it would fit into the conversations we've had this semester, right? Now, we're going to get more in depth with that here in a minute, but again, at the most foundational, that's all this assignment is. You can go further than that. You won't, so I won't spend a lot of time talking about that, but you could if you wanted to. That's totally on the table. What really matters in this assignment, I'm going to underscore this a couple times, okay? Like everything else this semester, specifics. Specifics are what matter. So, should you, if you're going to recommend like a movie that you saw last year that you were like, oh, that'd really be cool in this class, it'd really work, blah, 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 and here's why. Should you cover that stuff? Yes, obviously. But if you want to do really well on the project, you will then go one step further and look at a specific scene or talk about the way a particular character is conveyed. And again, think to any of the conversations we've had this semester, any of them, about any of the texts we look at. We'd spend a good 5 minutes on here's what it's about, and then the rest of the class would be let's look at some details, let's think about what the connotations are, right? Like that's what we're trying to do, always. And all I'm interested in is here's the thing you are into, and now you're telling me about it, okay? That's what the project is. Now I have an example that, again, I'm actually quite excited about. But before we get to that, any questions you might have right now about this?
Is there a time limit?
There's not a limit. Again, I feel like, because you'd be surprised, man, 10 minutes will go kind of fast. I mean, I think some of the longest ones I've had were around 20, But, I mean, honestly, if you hit 20 minutes, I think you can feel pretty good. But again, if you want to go longer, go for it. I may not watch all of it. I'm being honest with you. Look, I'll tell you this. If you go for 20 minutes and you can't more or less do what I've asked you to do, then there's a problem. Right? So yeah. But I mean, we'll call it a half an hour. Make it happen in half an hour.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the required, I say at least 10 minutes. I want you to try to get to over 10. A lot of people try to knock it out at 7. I'm telling you that's not long enough. So if your concern is, I'm worried I'm going to go too long, you'll probably be fine. Okay. Did you have a question?
It was already answered by what you said.
Sweet. Okay. Any other questions before we get to my example, which again, I'm very excited about? Okay. When I say to you the words last dragon, does anybody have any associations with that phrase? That's Enter the Dragon.
I know. It's always been good.
Okay. Well, there's a movie that's actually older than I am. It came out in 1985. It's 1 year older than I am. Called The Last Dragon. We're going to watch 2 clips. The first one, I told you before, what I would do, like if I was in this class, I would totally recommend this movie. Because, to be quite frank with you, it's bananas. It's bananas. It was produced by Berry Gordy. Does anybody know who that is? Okay. Berry Gordy founded Motown Records. Does anybody know what that is?
Yeah.
Some of you do. Okay. It is historically, I mean, it's not quite as big as it once was, but also records aren't as big as they once were. But historically, it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of a quick way to sum this up. It's like foundational in terms of black music and culture in the early to mid 20th century, right? So they found a lot of stars that you might have heard of way back in the day. They ripped a lot of them off too, by the way, but that's also just how that worked back then. Anyway, Berry Gordy is a music sort of pioneer. right? Like, I'm sure he's in all kinds of like halls of fame and all that stuff. So the point I'm making to you is he produced a movie at one point called The Last Dragon. The Last Dragon is a kung fu movie set in Harlem in the 80s. Berry Gordy has no business being involved in a movie like that. Not really. So when I tell you it's crazy, I mean it. And it's awesome. It's so good how batshit this movie is. I love it. Now, I could tell you about the plot, and I probably will have to tell you a little bit. But I want you first to come in a little bit blind. I'm going to show you the official trailer. This is, I mean, obviously it was posted in 2015, but this is the trailer that came out before the movie back in 1985. This is trying to get people to go see it, all right? So this is the marketing people, what they thought would get people in to see this film. It's only a minute and a half long. We're going to talk about it afterward. No lie, this last thing, my wife would never allow it. I would buy whatever print that, like, if that. I love this movie.
I saw this years ago in VHS tape.
It's really good. It's a really good movie. When you see that trailer, what do you envision this movie as?
Like exploitation.
Some would say, I mean, based off the trailer, or because you've seen the movie, you said, so it's kind of hard to separate the two.
B movie.
For sure. Yeah. Well, like a B movie, kung fu, just kind of.
You found out like VHS like a gas station.
Yeah. Which maybe is where you found it, I don't know. But yeah, it's kind of, yeah. It is a kung fu movie, okay? But the reason I show you that trailer, that's really only half the film. And again, you may have run into this yourselves when watching movies, or when going to see a movie, whatever. You watch the trailer, the preview, it looks pretty cool. You get in and you're like, that trailer was not accurate. Right? Like, well, because that's what marketing does. They're like, well, what do people really want to see? They want to see people kicking ass. All right, we'll leave the other stuff out, which is, because there is that. There is a lot of that going on in the movie. But there's a lot of other things that kind of get dropped in here. So that's part of it. The other part of the film, and again, they introduce you to pretty much all the main characters in here. The main character's name is Leroy. His name is Leroy Green. He is commonly referred to in the film as Bruce Leroy. He's a burgeoning kung fu master. He's at the end of his sort of journey, learning, and he gets challenged by a gentleman by the name of Sho'nuff. I know. Oh, it's so much better. We're gonna watch the scene. It's so much better than you can imagine. It's like my brain wrote something for me before I was born. It's so good. Anyway, the Sho'nuff also refers to himself as the Shogun of Harlem, which you'll see. And he does not like that Leroy is being touted as, you know, the master, because Sho'nuff wants to be the strong. By the way, this is classic kung fu movie stuff. This is like all the way back to the 60s and the 70s. Why are these people always fighting each other? It's like, well, they just want to know who the best is. There's no other way. No. That's the whole conflict between these two characters is this dude wants to make sure this dude knows he's better than him. That's the whole. Now there's other stuff going on in the movie that I will not trouble you with, but again, it's strangely complex, okay? But for the sake of understanding the scene we're about to look at, that's basically all you need. Leroy is the good guy. He doesn't want to fight. He's, again, very kung fu movie stereotypical. He's peaceful. Sho'nuff is very stereotypically the bad guy. He's violent. And we're going to see how that breaks down. Now, we're probably going to watch this scene twice. And again, I don't want to spoil it for you. So the first time through, we're just going to watch it. I will give you some context. But after we watch it, we might talk about it for a second. Then we're going to watch it again. And all I'm interested in, to the best of your ability, anything you notice, just like we talked about with Die Hard, just like we talked about with all the texts we've looked at this semester, right? Anything odd or interesting or like, what the hell is that about? Anything like that, okay? So the scene we're about to look at It's early in the film, and it's 5.5 minutes long, so I guess buckle up. But it's early in the film, and I hate to spoil this part because it's one of the really cool shots. There's two really cool shots in this scene that depend upon this, but I'm gonna spoil this part. They're watching a movie. So the scene opens on Bruce Lee, and you're like, oh shit, Bruce Lee's in this movie. No, this is a famous Bruce Lee movie that is being watched inside the movie. Got me? Okay. It's in a packed theater. You're going to see a lot of people, but there's only a couple main characters. Pretty much everybody in the scene they're extras. They're outstanding extras, but they're extras. You'll notice the main characters when they come in. This is going to be the first time these two characters meet, Leroy and Sho'nuff, and Sho'nuff is going to kind of spell out what their conflict is about. Okay? And again, we're gonna watch it again after this, but I mostly just want you guys to understand anything at all about the movie. So we're gonna watch the scene one time. If you notice anything, maybe jot it down. But you will have a second run at it. Here we go. So look, you just saw a lot. There's a lot in that scene. We're gonna watch it again. We will. But at this stage, we're going to do two things. First thing we're going to do, let's try to summarize what happens. Like the scene opens with Bruce Lee movie. I believe it's Enter the Dragon, if memory serves. What happens after that? We're watching the movie. I told you, packed theater. They all seem to be really into it, right? What happens after that?
As people start playing music, that guy gets up and crashes through.
Start breakdancing in the middle of a movie. Like people do, right?
Mhm.
Okay. What happens as a result of that?
Some guy gets up, crashes like their boombox, like a parallel of like what's going on in the
It
movie.
is very clearly and very purposefully, shot for shot almost, synced up to the movie, right? So that's the filmmakers trying to say, hey, look at this, right? So that might be worth taking note of. Okay, good. What happens after that?
Sho'nuff comes in.
The baddest and the prettiest, was it Mofo town, around this town, something like that? I screwed it up, but you get it. I'm not the Shogun of Harlem stuff. He walks in with his entourage. They even have a little like thing they do, like crisscross applesauce thing they do. Yeah, that's his intro. In the movie, by the way, like as a viewer, this is how you're introduced to this character, along with everybody else in the theater. So that's kind of interesting. He has his own row, apparently. He goes to sit, but then something happens. What happens?
Some kid yells like, "Hey, you suck."
He says, no, I know who can beat you. That's the one thing you cannot say. I guess there's two things. The other is sit down and shut up. But like, you cannot say, I know who can beat you. Because as we very quickly learn, Sho'nuff, well, he already told us he's the baddest. So if you say somebody, that means he's not the baddest. Therefore, you've challenged his baddestness. You can't have that. So he goes and finds the kid. It's a kid. Kid points out Bruce Leroy. Before we get there, real quick, I feel like some of you noticed this because I heard a chuckle. By the way, I was stifling my laughter the entire time. Not because I don't love this movie, because I do love this movie. But one of these stupid perks of my job is I just made you all watch this scene. It delights me. You cannot imagine. It delights me. Anyway, that kid, seconds before that, I think a lot of you caught this, goes to Sho'nuff. That's a weird inclusion. So anyway, I'm skipping ahead, but okay. So he points out Bruce Leroy. Sho'nuff seems to know who he is. Bruce Leroy. And he goes over there. He gives him a talking to. How's that go?
He doesn't care.
He doesn't, and he hits him with like, how is he talking to
Like a
Sho'nuff?
proverb.
Like a fortune cookie, right? Right? Like he doesn't sound like a human being. And Sho'nuff, I think rightfully, takes umbrage with that. He has words for that, not all of which I can actually say, but yeah, he's just like, what the fuck is this guy even talking about? Like there's a severe disconnect between these two characters, which we might talk about. Okay? Good. Then as I can only describe, professional wrestlers in the balcony tell him to sit down and shut up. That's what they are, right? You see the guy. I hit my head too hard with that. Well, no, when the dude takes off his jacket and he's wearing a pink crop top, you're like, whoa, Harlem was weird in the 80s. Yeah. Well, they tell him to sit down and shut up, and you're like, okay. And then, I don't know if you guys picked up on this, the bass kicks back in. It only plays when Sho'nuff is about to do some Sho'nuff stuff. It happens when he walks in, and when that guy tells him to sit down, like you see the mood change. The speakers in here were struggling. Yeah. Kind of got me going.
They were late. Like,
Do what?
He did all this and now he's saying.
But my favorite part of the whole scene, those guys are one thing, and yeah. But before we get to them, the giant dude who smashed the boombox, and by the way, the breakdancers did nothing. That was the end of that exchange. They're like, he gets up, and you're like, okay, this guy's gonna do some shit because we just saw, and that doesn't go well for him.
His hair ripped out.
Yeah, which again is actually a very classic kung fu movie trope with there's a couple nods in here that are purposeful. But dude's girlfriend, I don't know if you can quite hear her in this. She says things like, rough him up, baby. And then it's not going well. She said, don't hurt the face, baby. Like anyway, then the professional wrestlers show up. They get trounced. They don't even make it to the stage. Not all theaters, especially these days, have this. But many theaters, especially back in the day, were converted playhouses. So it's interesting, too, that Sho'nuff is doing most of this on a stage. We might talk about that in a minute, right? And then what happens? There's only a little bit left.
He breaks that guy's leg and then bites him.
Several kung fu people literally leap out of nowhere. Yeah. And the last guy who makes the mistake of catching Sho'nuff off guard, because he's trying to speak without contractions when he talks to Leroy, like, you will see that I am the master, like he's doing that thing.
Yeah, the guy that his ankle he broke was wearing flip-flops.
Well, not only that, but he, I guess, apparently bites the guy's Achilles.
Yeah.
Right?
Breaks his ankle 3 separate times.
It's very. So it's all, if nothing else, from our description, I want you to take away, it is super over the top. There's like a reasonable level of suspension of disbelief. Like the movie they're watching, and again, it's only in the background, you might have missed it. Bruce Lee, at some point in that scene they're watching, fights like 50 dudes. And if you watch it even for a second, like if you watch the Bruce Lee scene back again, you'll notice most of them, like in all those movies, they're kind of going, is it my turn to get kicked in the face yet? Like they're all kind of, oh shit, like that's how those movies are. Because in real life, sure, I'm not wanting to fight Bruce Lee. No. But if it's me and 49 other dudes and I'm like number 47, I like my chances. I feel like we get him. Numbers 1 through 10 probably have a bad day. Everybody else, we got him, right? Not so in that movie. And what's interesting, anytime a movie shows you a movie, we talked about in Die Hard a little bit, they talk a lot about movies. Why do they want you thinking about movies when you're watching a movie? I thought the whole point was to get lost in it, right? You cheer for some of the characters, you boo other characters, and you're just in it. Yeah? But here, they want you thinking about movies and what's real and what's not. And a lot of this scene is not real. Is not. Not even close. Yeah? So that's interesting. With that in mind, we're going to watch it one more time. And after this time, I just want you guys, to the best of your ability, anything you notice, anything stands out, odd or interesting. We've pointed out a couple things, but there's way more. This is a super packed scene. All right. So, obviously, I have so much to say about this, but I want to hear from you guys. Anything at all you might have noticed? Anything at all? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Sho'nuff is wearing red and Leroy's wearing blue. I just like that contrast.
Well, yeah, and I mean, again, in super traditional, like they're watching a 70s kung fu flick, here in the mid 80s. So like we're at the height of that kind of wave. That's pretty common. I mean, look, I grew up watching anime, and it kind of lives on in that. But like the good guys wear a certain color, the bad guys wear a certain so they kind of wear uniforms, so he knows. And it's really helpful too. Sho'nuff's crew also has like sort of derivative uniforms based off of his. Like they all have red, this weird sort of camo type thing. So yeah, it kind of lets you know who's on whose side. And later in the movie, Leroy has his own school, and he has little disciples who kind of wear similar outfits to him. He actually also has a full yellow bodysuit at one point. No shit, if you ever seen Kill Bill Volume 1, her suit is based off of his. So Tarantino's a fan too, can't all be bad. But yeah, basically, yeah, it's a really easy way to identify folks, which might play a role in something we're going to talk about in a moment. But very good, very good. What else you guys notice?
People think Sho'nuff is ridiculous.
It's weird, right? Because he is also terrifying. Like, it's never, I don't think, covered in the movie, but he keeps saying things occasionally. Like at one point he says the Shogun is back. So that sounds like, well, he was here before. And wherever he went, I'm assuming it was jail or something, right? Like, you can't just walk around doing these things. But wherever he went, you would think he's got a little bit of a reputation, so people know something about him. But yeah, he's really hard to take seriously. And especially like the kid gives us one of these. Leroy, I don't know if you could quite see. Yeah, he's smiling the whole time. And again, I don't know the trivia. I almost wonder if that was just how that actor like couldn't help but, because you can't, right? Like it's insane. Like everything about, especially Sho'nuff, is insane. It's insane. And so honestly, Taimak is the guy that plays Leroy. I think he does a great job to only smile. Like that's pretty understated. The other way I would think about that is, just like the way we talked about Die Hard, all of this, whether they're scripted or not, they're included in the movie. So like say that the actors just laugh, because it's hard not to. The filmmaker decided to keep that stuff, right? So why, again, we're being introduced to Sho'nuff here. Why have him be terrifying, severely hurt several people, and in the same scene, we're made to understand that even people in the movie think he's a fucking clown, right? He is. He's like Ronald McDonald with a switchblade. Like, you don't want to mess with him, but it's pretty insane. Just like, what is that about? Why make the villain simultaneously terrifying and ridiculous? You don't have to answer that, but that's an important question. We're gonna go for it.
I liked, he's like, if you want, come down here and tell me to shut up, come down here, when all of them are, flooding towards him, you see it in the background, it's the same thing.
It is. So we parallel at the start of the scene, and we have it here again. So clearly, there is something happening with what goes on in movies like the one they're watching, as opposed to, the life they're living, right? This isn't a movie, but of course it is. So that, yeah, there's absolutely something going on there. Yes?
I like when he threw the guy who's carried in front of Leroy. Leroy just shook his head
Yeah, I like that too. Leroy's like, dude, come on, man. Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed, it's hard to tell in this scene. Sho'nuff is actually a big guy.
Yeah.
I've looked him up before, the actor. He's tall. So that dude that he roughs up, they're about the same height. That's a big lumberjack motherfucker. Just the way he's dressed the whole time, I'm like, Asian lumberjack. He's huge. He's huge. And Sho'nuff just rocks him. So there's that. But yeah, Leroy has a nice response.
That's everybody's smoking weed and drinking beer in the theater.
Dude, the joint, it's not the blunt that guy has is the most comically sized. And by the way, I don't know if you caught his accent. That guy's very clearly what?
Jamaican.
So he's the Jamaican stereotype. Can we, right? If you had to, for some reason, draw a Jamaican man in kindergarten, that's what you would have done back before you knew that was kind of fucked up? Yeah. Yeah. Did you guys notice, so now we're getting into a bit more of a detailed conversation. Did you guys notice anything else like that in this scene? And that's my way of saying there's other stuff in this scene.
Leroy was eating popcorn
With chopsticks! With chopsticks!
With his goofy ass Raiden Mortal Kombat hat.
And dude, by the way, there's people sitting behind him. Could you imagine being behind him in the theater? Bro, it's got a string on it. Fucking, yeah. But yeah, I've never been to China, so I don't know. But I can only assume if they have popcorn, they don't do with the... Yeah. So now, we've already covered that Shonuff is ridiculous, because he is. Leroy is the hero. He's also ridiculous. Even if he's not doing the chopsticks, which again is super over the top. Just his manner of dress, given the context. So like, if he were in the Bruce Lee movie, dudes walk around like that all the time. You wouldn't bat an eye at that. But you see everything that's happened before we meet Leroy in this scene, and you're like, who the fuck is that guy? It's weird. He stands out. Good. Anything else you guys notice? There's a lot of this in this scene.
I feel like the movie is reflecting on the audience. Like,
Yeah.
the audience probably wouldn't have, just after just watching the Bruce Lee movie,
Uh-huh.
they probably have the best down to go keep the bad guy out.
Well, not just that. You're right, but it's really quick at the beginning of the scene, and we move on to like bigger and better things by the end. Did you guys notice they all know the movie really well? Like right about the time it cuts out, they're quoting it. The whole crowd is quoting what the dude is saying on screen. They all know what's coming in the fight, and yet they all react like it's the first time. So like they're really big fans. They've seen this movie many times, and that brings me to a question that I feel like you guys can answer. If you've ever seen a movie many times, you're usually what of that movie?
A fan.
A big fan, right? You're really into it. It strikes me, I've seen this movie many times. So would it be fair to say at least some people in the audience kind of look up to maybe Bruce Lee or idolize him in some way? Do you know what I mean? Like maybe one of your first idols like this was like Harry Potter or something like that. You know, like again, just I'm dating you a little
I
bit.
guess if you're going to a theater in a karate gi, you probably will give them a little bit.
Yeah. No, all the ninjas that jump out of nowhere. Yeah, like they're really. And there was a real phenomenon during the 70s and 80s, especially in minority communities, where Bruce Lee was one of the real first minority movie stars. So like he got looked up to, like in the real world, he got there's data on this. He got looked up to in communities like this as, you know, hey, yeah, there's somebody like
a folk hero.
they kind of do this, right? So so there's that going on too, and that's kind of interwoven in all of this. And I'll continue, but I want to make the point clear. It's not just that they like it, and you're right that they're kind of living it out at the end of the scene. But you see at the beginning of the scene, it's even more than that. I think it's like woven into their lives in some way, which is absolutely worth considering. Yes.
Zach mentioned it earlier, but like I like the nod to like Greek mythology when he fights his Achilles heel, and that was like the finishing move.
I mean, it's also it smacks of professional wrestling again, and just
Yeah, I also like when that part was happening. Some guys in the background pumping his fist.
I
giving
see-
his
yeah,
motivation, like
like-
he's getting crippled for life in front of him.
yeah, yeah. Well, he's not acting like he's watching that. What's he acting like he's watching?
The movie.
A movie. This isn't real life. They're on a stage, as I told you earlier. This is a performance. This is a play. And the crowd, and I don't know if you noticed in front of the two scared white girls that had to move earlier are right in front of that guy who's going, yeah, yeah, as the guy's getting destroyed. And they're both watching too. They're both going. So they're an audience again, which is interesting. All right, we've laid a lot of groundwork, and there's way more in this scene. I tell you one more time, this is a very rich scene. Like, it's super loaded in ways that I won't drag you through anymore, okay? But it's there. I want to highlight something now, because I told you I did this to give you an example for the project. If I were a student and I were doing this project, I would start by Barry Gordy produced a movie in 1985 called The Last Dragon. It stars several people. Vanity, there's the two main stars in the movie, one name actors, Timac, Vanity. Vanity was Prince's girlfriend.
And Nikki Sixx's girlfriend.
Sure. Just the wild level of like the people involved in this film. But the point is, it's that kind of movie, right? Like it has that kind of people in it. I give you a brief summary of the film. Then I give you the context for the scene. I might include a link to this scene for my teacher's edification, right? Because I haven't seen what you've seen. And then I'd start talking about the scene itself, and I have a brief conversation just like the one we had. All the crazy shit we just saw. I'd point out a couple things. I'd talk about them a little bit, right? But then you've got to get specific, and that's what I'm going to do for you now. But I'm going to try to make you play along a little bit. We've highlighted a few of the spots where things are both super over the top, and I would say, especially by 2022 standards, offensive? Would that be the right word?
A little insensitive.
Insensitive would be better, especially when you admit it's 1985. It's a very different time and place. If Harlem was anything like this, it's very different. But the point I make there is that it wasn't quite like this. But yeah, it's insensitive. That may be a slightly nicer way to put it. My question is why? Okay. Now you said exploitative earlier, which is possible. There's a whole subgenre of film called blaxploitation that exists, and a lot of people would put this movie into that subgenre. And I'm not going to discount that completely. I think that's fair. I have I say a colleague. There's a woman who used to work here who I talk to a lot. I like her a lot. She's a really smart lady. She studies this stuff. She's better at it than me. I once confided in her that I really like this movie. She's like, that movie's fucking racist. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And she studies this stuff. So it's like, well, she probably has a point. But I'm going to try to defend, and I tried to defend it to her then. And that's actually when I started doing this to you guys. There's a moment in this scene that I want to look at specifically. When Sho'nuff is in Leroy's face, right? And he's doing the, and I think I heard Stefan react with he's right in his face and Leroy's not even blinking, you know. And it's supposed to communicate, right? Again, this is what Sho'nuff's all about. This is what Leroy's all about. Very
Collective.
Yeah, fine. But it's what Sho'nuff says. And I can't say it.
I can hear what he said.
Well, you can't hear all of it, but you can hear this. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Can anyone, you don't have to say it if you don't want to, but can you help us, because not everybody does. Can you help us understand what it is I'm referring to? Because I am not allowed to say it.
It's like the racial word that he's got in.
Well, they use it now, too.
Oh.
Maybe not as much. Maybe not as freely as they did in 1985, but I hear it. You know. They use a certain term for African Americans. Sho'nuff does. And look, when Sho'nuff uses it, again, people have different opinions on this, but it's kind of okay for him to say it. Am I incorrect in that?
No.
Okay. Why is that? And hold on, I gotta say real quick, I'm sorry. I didn't used to do this, and then I started getting fucking emails. When I ask you guys a question, it's not because I don't know the answer. I want to make that clear. I get emails about this. I can't believe you didn't know. No, but I fucking know. I know. I'm asking you answers to get your answer. I'm sorry I interrupted you. I just remembered. I was setting myself up for an email. I don't want that. I do know the answer to this, but I'm asking you guys. So please continue. Why is it okay, or at least not bad, for Sho'nuff to say that? The same what?
The same thing?
Thing is an interesting. Same what? Like let's. This is worth diving into. And by the way, we got to at least get the phrase. And again, if nobody wants to say it, it's okay. But what? They're the same race, same group,
Same environment.
In that way. But again, I want to get the phrase real quick. It's not just. It's the N word is what we're talking about. What's the end of the phrase? Nobody remembers?
Does it say please?
Please. Now we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. But it starts with, he uses that term to Leroy, and it's fine. Again, some people may frown upon it, whatever. But it's a part of speech that a certain group has, especially within that group, right? To put it pretty simply, it sounds very different come out of Sho'nuff's mouth than it would mine. We agree on that? Cool. All right. Why does he say it, do you think? And this is why I brought up the whole phrase. It's not just that word. He says, please. What is he saying to Leroy?
Try me.
Yeah. Here, we can watch that moment, but that's just a moment. I can find it. All right.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
What does he mean when he said between show and total supremacy?
That is a very ridiculous thing that guy says. So the whole thing about this movie is that it's a traditional. Honestly, I think they did their damnedest to make a traditional kung fu movie, and they just put it in Harlem. So there's little touches throughout of, because most kung fu movies take place in this weird, like they're in China, but like it's kind of modern day, but kind of also not, like feudal China. So people talk like that. It's a very medieval thing to say. He's the only thing that stands between show and total supremacy. Supremacy back in the day would be, oh, you're like the lord of these lands now. But all this means is he's going to fight this guy, and people will know he's the baddest. But it's just an insane line to say in 1985. There is no such thing as total supremacy. That doesn't even make sense.
Fighting with you, Harlan.
Yeah, no, but again, I don't want to go too far down that road because that's a whole other conversation we could have, and we won't. But again, this movie is doing something with that, with these insane considerations that are part of the genre. But first of all, how does he arrive at that phrase?
Catches bullets with his teeth.
He tells a story about Leroy catching bullets with his teeth, and then he says that phrase. Why do you think that is? He's making a point there.
That you're not all that. You're like a folklore.
Yeah.
He pretty much called him a cartoon to
Like,
his
that's
face.
not believable.
Good. Well, it's both of those things. It's clearly not believable. Catches bullets with his teeth. Like that sounds like something out of one of those movies they're watching, right? And then you factor in the way that he's dressed, and then you factor in the way that he's eating his popcorn with chopsticks. All of this is staring Show Enough in the face, and then he says that phrase. So it's not just that he's not real and just that he's cartoon. Both of those are accurate, for sure. What's he trying to say to he's saying to Leroy, you're not what you're looking like or acting like. What's he saying to Leroy here? Yeah.
You're not a real martial artist like me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of baked in, but like, what is he saying he is then?
He just,
A fraud.
but he's just like, he's acting like an Asian, but he's just like
Good.
an American, basically.
What kind of American?
A minority.
He's a black guy from Harlem. That's what he's saying to him with that phrase. He's saying, you and I both. Now, again, what's interesting about this is Show Enough is also a cartoon.
You're probably highlighting just like his own insecurities.
Yeah, maybe. At least Leroy has a fucking name. I'm pretty sure it doesn't say Show Enough on his birth certificate. I'm pretty sure there's not. But yes, he's interestingly to me saying you're not real, and he tries to connect with Leroy on something I guess Show Enough would say is more real, which is we're both African American men from Harlem in the 80s. And again, he says this while he is himself a cartoon, which is odd that he would be that blind to his own insanity. But that tells us there must be something else going on. Basically, what I want to tell you right now is the filmmakers are, and oh, what time is it? I keep losing track. Thank you. Oh, God. All right, so the filmmakers keep holding up for us. Insane. I know we've said it many times. This whole scene, everywhere you look, the Jamaican guy, the Elvis impersonator. I don't know if you guys caught him. He's there. He's in the background. The professional wrestlers. There's a trans woman. The Asian guy's girlfriend is a trans woman, pretty clearly. So it's weirdly inclusive, but also stereotypical. The whole scene is awash in stereotypical representations. This is, by the way, one of those moments that colleague of mine would go, this movie's fucking racist. That is exactly what she said to me, so like I remember it.
Is that intentional that it's like that, or is it just like...
That's my question.
I think it's because like Harlem was like a melting pot. Right?
Well, it was. But again, we would understand to some degree at least that it wouldn't look like that.
It wasn't like
Yeah, they'd be people. It wouldn't be
the
cartoons.
movies are like exaggerated.
That exactly. You're so smart. So here's what we're saying then. How do you, in 1985, convey to an audience like ourselves that this is a rich community full of all kinds of different people from all kinds of different walks of life and nationalities and everything else? How do you convey that in a movie?
You fill it with a bunch of Looney Tunes.
You kind of make them into cartoons, right? Like how that Jamaican guy, we never see him ever again in the movie. These are all extras. I'm telling you, like they're only here for this scene for the most part. You can't. They almost have to be stereotypical to convey that they're different kinds of people. Otherwise, they're just people. Now again, in 2022, I think we would say, well, that's fine. They can just be people. And maybe so, but my question is not what should or should not the movie be. The question is, well, why is it the way it is, right? We are absolutely considering stereotypes, and we're holding it next to pretty firmly how those stereotypes are represented, because we're thinking about movies. There's one playing the whole time. And this cartoon aspect, I like that word, but like the super over-the-top representation, the insane representation of these different kinds of people, right? One thing Show Enough says is that phrase, "I cannot say," right? And we talked a little bit about it. I want to talk about it a little bit more because I want to quickly move to one other thing he says. When people like Show Enough say it to people like Leroy, what does it usually mean? This is not a trick question.
Come on, dude.
Dude, or buddy, right? Like it's a sentence. Like again, you can use it in a pejorative way, and historically that's been its connotation. But like many groups, like queer has been kind of taken back by the gay community, right? Like it means a different thing depending upon how it's used. Similar things have happened with that word. Now I still can't say it, but I don't look like Show Enough. So the point I'm making to you here, he's also saying to Leroy, he's trying to include him. He's trying to say, you and I are similar. Can you fucking act like me a little bit? Like again, I know how Show Enough looks. But think about how he talks. He kind of goes in between two modes. Sometimes he doesn't use contractions, which is ridiculous. And other times he says the other thing I'm interested in. He says, "Get up, Leroy. I got something real for your ass in these hands." I know. But think about what he says. First of all, think about how he says it. "I got something real for your ass." That sounds like a guy about to whoop some other guy. That's just what that sounds like. He sounds like a person who's going to fuck somebody up. But he also says, "I got something real." What's the connotation there then? It's bullshit. Your whole thing is bullshit. He's calling him out. And again, I think he's right, while also being wrong about himself. And he's trying to communicate that according to racial, in some ways very stereotypical lines. And the question becomes, why is he doing that? Is that all he has available to him? How else could he try to signal to Leroy, hey, the cartoon you're after is fake. Let's both ride the same cartoon together. This one at least has some historical backing. There's something to this, as opposed to, you're living the movie version of Asian heritage. Come live the still kind of movie version of Black heritage, but it's not quite as, right? At least you'll look the part, basically. That is a really interesting commentary on racial stereotypes, racial depictions in the 1980s, and what's possible Yes, sir.
I don't ask to be a smart ass or anything,
Sure.
but do you think that like the director was thinking all of that when he put all this in here, or it's just something we realized
Well-
later on looking back?
What time is it, real quick?
It is.
Because some of you are
Almost 7.
packing up, you're making me nervous. I think some of it has to be, because again, it's so over the top. Everybody in this scene is a stereotype. And again, you haven't seen the rest of the movie, and you won't, which breaks my heart a little bit. It's a great movie. Leroy has a little brother who's probably like 15 or something. You know, he's a kid. And the whole movie, he just makes fun of Leroy. Because he's just a regular kid. Like, if you saw them both walking down the street, you'd be like, oh, that's a kid, and that's a creep. Right? Like, there's no... He just wears, like, a jacket and some jeans. Like, he just looks like a dude. And the whole movie, he's just like, what the fuck is wrong with Leroy? And his mom's like, you leave him alone. And again, his brother has the same problem Show Enough has with him, which is like, he doesn't act like he's supposed to, if you catch my meaning. So he doesn't act like an African-American guy from Harlem. He doesn't act like we expect him to. Which is interesting. Because again, I think we would all have that problem with him. It kind of calls us out in a way, I think, for, like, we're very quick to judge people for stereotypical representation, but I think part of the point is we use it too. Like, if Leroy just looked like a black guy from Harlem, we wouldn't wonder about stereotypes, even though it would probably be a stereotypical representation. You see what I'm saying? So it kind of indicts All right, two things here, and I am trying to hurry. I know we're almost out of time. There is a line between seriousness and satire, and that's a hard line to find. Satire, by the way, is when something is so over the top, it's clearly making a joke. But not everybody always gets the joke. So if you've ever seen like a relative post like an Onion headline or something, The Onion, by the way, is a stereotypical publication. It's all jokes. But sometimes people miss the joke. You're like, can you believe this? And it's like, no, I can't, because it's not real. A similar thing is happening here, I think, because it's so over the top. It's so over the top, it's insane, right? But again, the point is, I think, with the way Show Enough is trying to talk to Leroy, got something real for you, right? Like all these things, he's saying, well, what's real? What would be considered real in this movie? It's if he just acted more the part. If he performed black man as opposed to Asian man, all of a sudden we don't even think it's a stereotype. It's like, no, that's how he's supposed to be in this country, right? Like that's what we expect. So it points out the cartoons, but then also ties them to the cartoons that we take more seriously, if that makes sense. That's how I would talk about this scene in this movie, if I were to do this project. And just to be perfectly clear, you can start with general stuff. All of you will start with, this movie talks about masculinity. That's fine. That's fine. This character is really masculine. Great. Great. But what happens? Get specific. Like always, everything we do, find a detail or two, dive into a character, anything stand out to you, and build off, like basically build me one body paragraph vocally. If you can do that, you'll probably do really well on this project. Okay? Yes?
Can we use like multiple scenes or do you want to use one?
You would be best advised, given the time limit, to try to stick to one. You can, for context, maybe describe one or two, right? But if it, like, again, whatever detail you want to pick up, it's got to be pointed. Because, again, 10 minutes may feel like a lot of time. It's not. It's really not. I would stick to one when it comes to your analysis. Any other questions? Other than, can we leave? All right. Due dates are on the syllabus. They're on course 10. I don't even remember what we're doing. Oh, I want to remind you. I'm so sorry. Two more things you want to know about these. Number one, if, and Dakari, if you would like to have a little more time on your paper, I have your attention now. I will give you until Friday night, 11:59. Now, of course, hopefully most of you have already turned the paper in. If that's the case, and you want to keep it that way, then we don't have to talk about it. If, however, you would like a little more time, you felt rushed, you feel like you could do better, you got to let me know because I have to delete your original submission so that you could resubmit. That's how Turnitin works. Okay? So think about it a little bit. And again, if you turn it in and you feel good about it and you want it behind you, live that life. I'm cool with it. Otherwise, 11:59 Friday night, turn it in. The other thing I want to let you know about, it's kind of become this over time. I don't know how or why, but it has. I've never announced it beforehand, but I'm going to try it. For some reason, our last day of class has turned into an AMA where, are you guys familiar with that phrase?
Yeah, ask me anything.
Yeah, people will show up and just ask me weird shit. Some people seem to be entertained by it. So I'm telling you now, if anything strikes you, I mean anything. I always try to be super honest and transparent with you guys, sometimes maybe to a fault. If there's anything on your mind in terms of the class, in terms of classes you got coming up, in terms of a body you gotta hide, anything at all, anything you wanna ask me, I got thoughts on the body. Anything at all you wanna ask me for the last day of class, I think it's next week if I'm not mistaken. Oh, we knew that one. Sort of jot them down, bring them with you, and we'll talk about them then. All right? All right. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you.